Eating is a coping mechanism for many people during times of stress. It's so common because unfortunately it works, or at least it seems to work. Eating foods that are high in sugar and refined flour has an immediate calming effect. It comes with long-term consequences and can be hard to reverse. I'm Dr. Carolina Melgar from Sono Health, and today I want to share with you what happens every time you stress eat and practical ways that I found to control it. You know, there are physiological reasons for turning to food when you're stressed. Eating refined treats like desserts, cookies, chips, and candy causes a release of dopamine in your brain. And dopamine is nicknamed the feel-good chemical because when it's released, you feel good and calm and less stressed. So sugar gives you an immediate reward. And even though that good feeling is not sustained for very long, it makes a powerful impression in our brains. So in fact, your brain creates neurochemical pathways that remember the joy you felt the last time you ate sugar. So when you experience stress in the future, your brain recalls that eating sugar gives you release, and therefore it stimulates your cravings. And on top of that, you continue to eat refined sugars, desserts, and fast foods every day. The constant stimulation becomes too much for your brain. And the dopamine receptors that pick up on that feel-good chemical diminish. This is your brain's attempt to down-regulate this. But what you find is that it takes more and more junk food to make you feel good. So we're up against a lot when it comes to stress and dealing with food. There's a fascinating study that took 51 young healthy men and they broke them into two groups. 29 of them were subjected to stress. They had to place their hand in a bucket of ice water for about 3 minutes while they were videotaped. They took then both groups and showed them a series of images comparing two foods. One that was an unhealthy but a tasty option like a cookie, and one that was healthy but less tasty like broccoli. They had to pick between these two, and at the end they would be rewarded with one of the options they chose. During this time, they also scanned their brains with functional MRIs to look at the blood flow to the different parts of the brain. They checked their stress hormone levels and asked them about their levels of stress. So that was the basis of this study. And what's fascinating is that they found that the men who had been under stress actually chose the more unhealthy or tasty options, the short-term reward. And what was most interesting is when they looked at the MRIs, they found different patterns of connectivity or changes in the brain circuitry. And what they saw was that the more primitive areas of the brain, the amygdala, the striatum that controls emotion, motivation, and decision-making functions, such as habit formation, reward, and pleasure, were heightened. They were amplified. And the parts of the brain that control goals, your long-term goals and your planning, were sort of decreased or diminished. And so there was an imbalance in the signaling of the brain. So you might ask yourself, what's the harm? Well, I think the big thing is that we're talking about willpower and self-control as if it's almost something very simple. You know, just stop eating, have more self-control. And this is really what's telling us is that there's a lot more biologically there that might be playing into it. And that it's not just an on and off switch, and that there are multiple neural pathways that are at work. And any change in any part of that pathway could offset your ability to have optimal self-control. So what can we do? How can we basically outsmart this physiological mechanism? Well, I think there's a couple of things you can do. Number one, remove the temptations. Let me rephrase that. Run away from the temptations. So if you're in your office where you're stressed, don't keep the donuts around. If you know that this place is a stressful environment for you, then obviously try not to pack unhealthy snacks. Also, try to identify the stress triggers and recognize that this particular stress situations is sometimes you can manage in a different way. Deep breaths, positive thoughts, exercise. The interesting thing too is that one of the theories that explain this is that it happens because of evolution. Imagine if you're stressed in the wild. You're not going to think about what's going to happen a year from now. You're going to think about, how do I get myself back to feeling balanced and stable right now? So back to the office. Try to identify the stress triggers and analyze how you can manage this situation in a different way. A way that is not going to have such bad consequences in the future. Stoppers are also one of the things that work. Stopper. It's an activity or an item that separates me from the desire of eating. They're particularly helpful for ending a meal before dessert. Stoppers work before either they change the taste in your mouth or they take a long time to consume, which gives your brain the time to realize that you're full and then shut down hunger. So, there's a lot of different stoppers that can help you. The ones that work for you may not work for me, so there's a lot. But one particular thing that you can do is have a stick of minty sugar-free gum sitting beside your dinner plate. As soon as you're finished eating, put the gum in your mouth. Don't think about it, just pop it in. The mint flavor changes the taste in your mouth, making it undesirable to keep eating. So you can also have a cup of tea besides and sip it immediately after dinner. The tea makes a great stopper because it's hot, which means that it takes time to consume, and that gives your brain time to realize that you're full. Another strategy is keeping the junk food out of your house. You know, in today's world, it's very hard to avoid the news. And the news is pretty good at telling us everything that is going wrong in the world. And it can certainly be depressing, and if it catches you at a time where you're tired or you're drained, it can send you straight to the kitchen, looking for something just to take the edge off of stress. So you're not looking for celery and broccoli, are you? You're looking for anything that is refined because, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, those refined foods are the ones that get into your system quickly and cause the feel-good dopamine response in your brain. You know, all I can say is that cravings pass. Whether you eat junk food or not, that craving will go away. If you don't have junk food available, it will probably feel like a bummer for a few minutes. But you'll be thankful later when the intensity of that craving naturally fades. Craving usually passes 3 to 5 minutes away. So, you know, we all lived through stressful times. I have a belief that this too shall pass. And the other day, I saw someone had posted a version of this saying that read like this too shall pass. It might pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. In other words, stress is an inevitable part of life. And stressful situations can stretch on much longer than any of us like. But the burden will always pass. I hope this helps you get your mind and your body working together. So try that. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe and follow. Thank you for watching.